Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Daniel Rahm, and I'm the Senior Legislative Liaison at the County Supervisors Association. Thank you all for having me here today. CSA is very supportive of this task force, and we want to thank Senator Worsley for bringing us all together here with his legislation. CSA is a nonpartisan forum for all of Arizona's 61 county supervisors. All 61 of them do sit on our board, representing all 15 counties. We provide a mechanism to share important issues facing local constituents, share information, and advance a proactive agenda. And our goal is to promote efficient, responsive constituent services and develop and disseminate information to a state and local decision making. So why is CSA here today? Counties in Arizona maintain over 20,000 miles of road. We maintain about a third of the total miles of public road in the state. We also maintain some of the American Indian Reservation and National Forest roads with agreements from the landowners. The needs among counties differ and are very dependent upon several factors, one being population, the other being area of the county, physical characteristics of the county like climate, terrain, it varies as you go to the northern part of the state to the southern part of the state, and the extent and the condition of the current roadway system. Going back to population, it's interesting to note that in Pima County, around 350,000 people live in the unincorporated area. And putting that into perspective, that would make unincorporated Pima County the fourth largest city in the state. So challenges that we face, while counties' needs are different and vary throughout the state, all 15 counties have identified the current road and highway conditions as one of their primary concerns in the state. And the biggest obstacles we face are a lack of sufficient funding, diversion of resources, and an increase to the cost of materials. In 2013, our board unanimously adopted a resolution stating that we need to do something to increase revenue in our state for transportation needs. And while no specific policy ideal was brought forth, we did recommend or suggest several options, everything from the gas tax, user fees on hybrids for electric cars. We also passed a resolution in 2015 similar to that, and I think you all should have a copy of that with you. So definitely our board and our 61 members, the county supervisors, have identified that something definitely needs to be done. HERF. Many county transportation directors believe HERF really stands for Highways Under Real Fatigue. And those of you who live outside of Maricopa County or have traveled outside of Maricopa County fully understand how truly bad our road conditions are. HERF is our bread and butter. Without it, we can't really pay for road improvements. Counties are very limited in terms of what we can do and our ability to raise taxes by the state. And in most counties, asking for a raise in the sales tax is a very heavy lift to ask us, especially in some of the smaller counties and in rural Arizona. Therefore, HERF is where most of our counties' budgets, highway budgets, are derived from. 90% goes to counties, and it's distributed based on a portion of gas distribution, diesel fuel consumption, and a portion of unincorporated population. We've heard a lot about the gas tax in Arizona, that how it's remained consistent since the 1990s. While gas prices have gone up, the state population has increased by 80%, and more fuel-efficient vehicles have combined to lower per capita fuel consumption, limiting our ability to pay for basic roads and highway construction maintenance. Factoring in inflation, improved gas mileage, the gas tax is actually less than half of what it was in 1960 at its peak. Last year, the legislature gratefully allocated $9.97 million and a one-time funding for HERF distribution to the counties. This was certainly a relief to us. However, moving forward, we're actually still quite concerned. Since 2005, $182.19 million has been redirected out of HERF distribution to the counties, which has been extremely troubling. Putting things into perspective, and I've listed Graham County's numbers on the right, but it will take 9 years to get back to the 2006 levels, which is essentially a 20-year gap between 2006 and 2025. The cost of road maintenance has also gone up, which has forced counties to make several sacrifices. We're not just talking about pavement. Improvements. We're also talking about for gravel and dirt roads. The costs for repairing and fixing those have also gone up over the last 10 years significantly. The effects of inflation on the cost of materials has also had an impact and virtually have made it impossible to keep up with the demands due to the lack of HERF funds as well. Instead of resurfacing, counties are often using chip seal as a less expensive way to repair the damages. However, you can see from this chart the cost of the materials has significantly increased from 2003, where 1 mile of chip seal would be around $4 million, and today it's at least triple the cost for 1 mile of chip seal. And where $500,000 got you back in 2003 was 118 miles of road fixes for chip seal. Today, $500,000 gets you about 40 miles. Counties are having to make significant sacrifices. Mojave County is facing a transportation shortfall currently of about $10 million. That number, it's kind of hard to see on this chart. That it's at 14, but currently it's 10. The shortfall is requiring counties to make various sacrifices in terms of how they handle road construction. Mojave, for example, is providing weatherproof chip seal to all paved roads every 25 years, which is 5 times the best practice cycle. They're also executing a capital pavement preservation program for highway pavement rehabilitation and a 33-plus year cycle, which is actually 2 times the best cycle practice. Delayed maintenance costs of counties. Maintaining and improving key transportation corridors is not only essential to the counties, but it's important to the economic growth of the entire state and plays a key role in international freight movements as well as supporting Arizona's ecotourism sector. Diversion of maintenance to county funds places a higher reliance on federal funds for reconstruction of failing roads. And additionally, you've probably all seen this pavement deterioration chart in the past. I know it's been talked about in the past. And on the side, you notice it says payment, P-A-Y. And the reason why I put that there was not a typo is because when it comes to payment, you're either paying now or paying later. So $1 spent in early life of payment saves $4 to $5 in the long run. So making that investment early on, you could see if you don't, the drop-off is significant in the deterioration to the roads. Now, in terms of resolutions, we unfortunately don't have all the answers. As Mr. Rounds said last committee hearing, if the solutions were easy, they would have been implemented by now. However, what we want to see is an end to the diversion of dedicated transportation funds like HERF. There is no one specific solution that we have identified. We do encourage this task force to consider a mix of several options, whether it be the gas tax, user fees on hybrids, etc. We do believe that DPS should be funded. However, we do have concerns when that money is diverted from HERF and where that money would go to the counties. It's also important that we identify deficiencies in our current and existing systems and work with federal and state agencies to streamline the grant process so we can effectively get some of those federal funds and use them at the local level. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Will Supervisor Babbott please come to the podium? Mr. Babbott is Coconino County Supervisor as well as the Executive Board Chair of the Flagstaff Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the task force. Real pleasure to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on your mission and our mission, as I think they intersect nicely. My name is Art Babbott. I'm the current chair of the Flagstaff Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'm also the chair of the Northern Arizona Intergovernmental Public Transportation Authority, NAPTA, and I am a supervisor for Coconino County in District 1. Ms. Neff, did the resolution get distributed to everyone? Great, thank you very, very much. Just a little bit briefly about who we are and at the FMPO, Flagstaff Metropolitan Planning Organization. Our members include the City of Flagstaff with representation from the mayor and council members. Another colleague of mine from the Board of Supervisors and I sit on the elected side, as well as productive relationships with ADOT and NAPTA, the Public Transportation Authority. We serve approximately 90,000 people in a radius of 525 or so square miles around Flagstaff, which includes all of the city limits of Flagstaff, as well as unincorporated communities in the county outside the city. As a rule, I think one of the great opportunities from my perspective that I have is to share with you the story of rural Arizona and transportation, the importance of transportation, systemic approaches to transportation infrastructure and connectivity that rural Arizona has. At the FMPO, we've been very supportive of looking at a suite of options in terms of fiscal strategies which meets our transportation objectives. And that plays out not just in the FMPO, and Ms. Pastrick, I think, will recognize some of this as familiar. It speaks to how we work collaboratively with partners, not only in Coconino County, but within our region. I'm part of a larger working group that includes the Central Yavapai MPO, as well as NACOG, that is trying to generate momentum and support and encouragement for the work that you are engaged with, that Senator Worsley put on the table, and I think that's very important to recognize that work, that allows us to have important and frank discussions about strategies towards fiscal sustainability of a system-wide approach to our transportation infrastructure. An indication of how that community conversation has gone in Coconino County and in Flagstaff, I think, is pretty indicated by some of the results of some of our sales tax initiatives that we brought to the voters over the last decade. The most recent was 2 years ago, when both the city and the county passed sales tax initiatives to fund the primarily maintenance of our existing infrastructure, to be able to maintain what we have. I think, as we all know, one of the interesting and at times troubling changes in how we bond and allocate resources is we have gone from a new capital philosophical approach to an O&M approach. And there's some very important ramifications for long-term viability of our infrastructure with that change. But it's been subtle, but it's been very important. We have a Prop 411 is coming, which relates to a renewal of the sales tax for the public transportation infrastructure. We have, I think, good consensus from both our public and private sector partners, as well as our communities, on what our core transportation principles should be. They should be based on connectivity. They should be based on a systems-wide approach. And fundamentally, they should be based on the reasonable expectations that citizens should expect us to put a transportation system that is transparent to them. They don't need to understand when they are leaving a county road to a city road to a state road, so long as that road and infrastructure is safe, is reasonably maintained, and done so in a thoughtful and fiscally prudent way. I think that's part of why we've had great success and had initiatives, sales tax initiatives that pass at the 60, 65 and above percentage rate in our communities. I think that value proposition is there. I think you've heard it from a lot of folks today, and that's certainly one of the things that we do as electeds. I'll speak for myself. I do, is to try to put the value proposition out and understand that it should be transparent when they cross these jurisdictions. So my point on that is we have done a lot of work locally. Now we are at an important stage where we're talking about not just local roads, but we're talking about state routes, states' highways, and then interstates. And this is where that importance of a transparent and connected network really comes into play. I think it's, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. The state route system and interstate is the economic lifeline of rural Arizona. It is the economic lifeline of Flagstaff. It is the economic lifeline of our communities. And people understand that if we need outcomes, or if we want outcomes associated with a transportation system that actually supports strong regional economies, supports communities, safe routes to school, we have to have fiscal strategies that enable and engender those outcomes. So with that said, in front of you, you have a resolution that the board just passed that I think helps share our perspectives, but I also hope you look at it as a supportive and encouraging document, that this is an opportunity. This took a lot of momentum, a lot of effort. I've been in public service and elected office since early 2000s. And this has always, the HERF issue has been the number one or number two issue for the last, 15 years on at least whether it was City of Flagstaff or Coconino County. And so this is the opportunity. Many of us have worked hard, and I want to thank you for taking that opportunity. So we need to put everything on the table, and we need to be thoughtful and understanding that difficult outcomes, if we want to achieve them, are going to require a few difficult decisions. And so the specific strategies, I think, that we have come, and you've heard a very common theme here today, that we are supportive of in resolution format. I think our colleagues at CYMPO are going to have a resolution for you if you don't already have it, and NACOG as well, is to look at that mix of short-term and long-term funding. I think the question about whether the gas tax is the right long-term mechanism is a great question. We believe it is a very appropriate short-term mechanism that can bridge until we get a vehicle miles traveled, thoughtful, parity-based fuel source assessment, user-based system. I really appreciated the comments that we have to return to a user fee-based system. Really want to encourage, and this came up earlier, us expanding the P3 opportunities. And if that, and in our resolution, we have explicitly called out tolling. Not because we are advocating that or not, but it's got to get put on the table as part of the discussion. And so that is included in our resolution for your reference. The state sales tax option, I think, is great because it does allow some relevancy and tether back to the price of fuel. Indexing is included here because, as we've seen in the inflationary reality over a 20, 30, 40-year window, the impacts are phenomenal. When we did our Prop 403 transportation ask, we had a graph that showed what the cost of asphalt emulsifier had done over the last 30 years. And I can tell you it's on a different bar scale than what the fuel tax has been to. Really appreciated the DPS discussion. It is integral to this discussion, to solving the puzzle to put this together. And, as one elected and as a representative of FMPO, that should be part of this discussion. I think this is our opportunity to have a holistic discussion on that. And so you have the resolution. I think our work with other partner agencies like Central Yavapai and some of the other COGs are hoping to build consensus around the values and the strategies associated with the work that's in front of you. So with that, I just want to thank you for being part of a really important process that I'm sure, and I know many of you have worked on for a long time. I know I have worked on it on a different side of the room perhaps, and maybe not as important as some of the folks down here, but certainly trying to engage the communities, constituents, and on what an incredibly important economic development piece is, school route safety and viability of our community. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time, the opportunity, and I'm happy to take some questions if anyone has one.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll start. Do you have any, or can you cite any examples of successful P3s that you've seen and how that might apply to some of the things we're looking at?
So I think, interestingly, the City of Flagstaff is engaged with a P3 right now with ADOT. It is not on it is on the facility side of ADOT, less on roads. So the answer is, on my jurisdictions, no. I do not have significant experience. What I can tell you is that from a qualitative perspective, if we want to achieve things, we have to have a strategy to make that happen, and we're going to have to make compromises. And so I understand that there are constituents who are, very reluctant about tolling out here, which may or may not be part of some P3s, but I think we have to put it on the table because that is where we are going to have resources to achieve outcomes.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Babbott, thanks for coming down here today. We appreciate it. And some of the things you've done in the region up there are pretty, I think, very good examples for the state. I mean, you recently passed 2 very successful sales tax increases for transportation. As you mentioned, they were for maintenance, and I think you have plans for some other things in the future. But both of those were widely supported by your communities, both at the county level, county-wide, as well as in Flagstaff. And I think that's indicative of the importance of transportation to local people and local communities. So I think you're a good example for what can be done.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. McGuire, appreciate that. There are ample opportunities to engage, the people we serve and the people who pay our taxes and our salaries on meaningful discussions on transportation.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Patrick.
Thank you, Supervisor Babbott. I'm really happy that we were able to review this together as a panel, because it does synthesize work that's been ongoing for a very long time, for over a year, with many stakeholders. And one of the opportunities that is reflected in here is the private sector engagement as well. So when we talk about perhaps in some of the other presentations a property tax or a new sales tax or some of the opportunities we have seen this morning, I always wonder if the private sector has been very significantly engaged, because some of these opportunities end up being regressive or recessive, because the business community knows that there's a certain cap to what fees and regulations that they can absorb. So this particular plan I have a great interest in, but I wondered, so for example, may I ask a question on one of the items?
Absolutely.
So I know that in northern Arizona and in rural Arizona, the number of miles driven is very different than down here. But then again, when you have someone in the West Valley, perhaps living in further than the middle central Phoenix, working in maybe the East Valley, it does definitely add up. So on the third bullet on the executive board recommendations, enact a VMT fee system and include alternative fuel vehicles. In Coconino County, can you describe how far the distance is right now for commuters to get to their places of employment, and how that would impact them? And what kind of the thought process was there? Because I know rural sometimes experiences longer distances.
Yeah, and I think the question is a good question, Mr. Chair and Ms. Pastrick, and an important one, especially when, I probably don't need to tell you this, but we live in the second largest county in the United States, and from corner to corner is, 5.5 hours if you want to go around that little ditch that we have to go around up there. But we have, significant members of tribal communities that cannot afford to live in Flagstaff and commute in. So I think that we probably have, relative to our population, actually, and our density, I think we probably have quite high vehicle miles traveled for many of those outlying communities to come in. The list is not meant to be prioritized in any way or meant to be exhaustive. It is hopefully meant to be a supportive document to let you know there are both electeds and organizations who want you and are encouraging you to put everything on the table. None of these are going to be pain-free. None of them are going to be pain-free. It's been my experience. I've never had a tough decision that did not have unintended consequences to it. But I do want to reference, too, as well, I think. So the answer is no quantitative assessment has been done as far as I know. It is something that, as we talked about, tolerance with 10% tax rates, for example, which the city and county were very cognizant of wanting to stay under that 10% when we added our third of a cent sales, a little bit less than third of a cent sales tax. There's a tolerance. There's absolutely a tolerance, and whether it comes at the individual budgetary pocketbook level of someone saying at the end of the year, this is my VMT hit, or a tax rate, I think if we don't understand that those are important tolerances, we're gonna not hit the runway correctly.
Thank you. And in addition, I heard from other counties and or presenters as well that whatever we're considering and whatever we're looking at, we're talking about being very clear about the outcomes of that investment. And Mr. Anderson in the MAG made that comment very clearly too, that as long as the people that are going to be affected and the voters, if you will, would understand that with this type of an investment, this is how our quality of life in this community can be maintained, sustained, or enhanced. Arizona consistently has a quality of life that we are very proud of. Flagstaff is consistently named one of the best places in America to live, one of the happiest places to live, whatever. And I firmly believe that if we all are pivoting from an economic development platform, which our governor is very bullish on, that the economy of our state is reliant, we all know, on these improvements. And if we keep in mind that the P3s and all of the partners involved should be able to agree these outcomes are essential, I think we're going to win. And we really appreciate that you're able to synthesize this, because this document is very large that accompanies all of these recommendations. So thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.